Gotham Police Commissioner Renee Montoya finds herself at a crossroads in her life. Will she help mentor the next generation of boys and girls in blue, or will she choose another path for herself? Let's hop into the pages of GCPD Blue Wall issue number 1, a brand new miniseries from John Ridley, and find out together, shall we? So then, as we join the book, Commissioner Montoya, who has been commissioner in the books for a long time now, but no one has ever actually bothered to tell any stories about her until right this minute, is doing the big commencement speech at the GCPD graduation for their brand new class of cadets. Renee gives an impassioned speech about how all these young new officers are going to be part of that fabric that holds together Gotham society as they know it. Bricks in the blue wall that hold back chaos. For those wondering, blue wall actually has a double meaning too when we're talking about cops. Google the term blue wall of silence sometime. In fact, it's made abundantly clear that a bunch of the brass at the GCPD very much thought that Renee Montoya meant the other meaning when she said blue wall, even though it's clear she didn't. We're actually introduced to 3 young officers that we're going to be following through the rest of the city. There's Samantha Parks, as well as Officers Ortega and Officer Wells. They're 3 very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed young officers ready to get out there into the streets and make a real difference in their communities. They're also really starstruck to be this close to Commissioner Renee Montoya because she's already such a legend in the Gotham police force. Little do they know, Renee's actually having a terrible time right now. In fact, her old PTSD is acting up right now when all those silver-haired, middle-aged white men who make up the GCPD top brass look like demonic faces in the background, and she even starts hallucinating Two-Face again. For those who don't know, Two-Face was the one who actually outed Renee Montoya as a lesbian all the way back in the landmark Gotham Central series. In fact, this new book from John Ridley actually shares a ton of continuity with the Gotham Central book, which is really awesome for me being a longtime fan, but also really weird as someone who reads a lot of DC comics. Because, well, No Man's Land happened, and Gotham Central happened, and all the stuff with Renee Montoya becoming the Question happened. This book kind of ignores the fact that at the end of her big long character journey, she ultimately decided to not be a cop, but then the universe reset itself and now she is a cop again, and she's basically playing out the same character journey that she had once before, with her becoming deeply disillusioned by everything that's going on at the GCPD. Which is weird, but hey, on the upside, they remember that Renee is also a recovering alcoholic, and hey, her brother Benny also returns too, who's a character we haven't seen in the books for decades. They even tie the events of this book in with John Ridley's other book, I Am Batman, wherein apparently he also wrote Commissioner Montoya for a little bit, wherein she ultimately considered maybe running away to New York, only to not do it. Now, from there, we actually get to see each one of those new young cops in a day in the life. First up, there's Officer Park, who's been assigned to Little Tokyo. Her superior officer chides her for not wearing sunglasses, a choice that Park made because she assumed that eye contact with the public was much more important than maybe going blind one day. Park isn't on the job long when they get a call about a young black suspect in a red sweater who is fleeing the scene of a crime. As Park says, that's a pretty damn vague description. How do they expect police just to go on this and not make any mistakes? They eventually do find a young man matching the prescription, and once the cops show up, he ends up running. The kid reaches into his pocket and Park assumes that he's reaching for a gun. She pulls her own weapon, but ultimately doesn't fire. More on this in a minute, though. From there, we check on in with Ortega, who we discover has actually been given a very prime assignment to Tri-Corners, one of the most crime-ridden parts of Gotham City. The shift officer expects great things from Ortega and says that the police in Tri-Corner take their job very seriously, which to me would seek to imply that maybe they're dirty. Because, if they took their job seriously, wouldn't it be a much lower crime rate part of the city? Ortega is such an overachiever and is so excited to begin his first day on the job as a cop, he actually shows up a whole half hour early, only to be told to sit the hell down by the guy at the front desk, and then he ends up overhearing a racial slur directed at him. Yeah, I probably should have mentioned too, this book actually comes with a content warning, because while all the other swearing, and there is a fair amount of it in this story, is actively blacked out, the racial slur is not. And I can only imagine John Ridley probably had to fight tooth and nail for that line too, because it really is important to Ortega's journey and to create a sense of authenticity. Now, back with Officer Park, she's being hailed as a hero, which Montoya just can't understand. Wait, she's a hero and an exemplary officer because she did her job and didn't shoot an unarmed black man? Isn't that just literally what we're supposed to be doing all the time, every day? The shift officer sees it differently, though. The GCPD needs all the good press they can get right now, and as such, they chose to hold up Officer Parks as a hero cop. One whose feel-good story could definitely help them recruit more officers in a time when they're really not seeing a lot of interest in the police academy. They even forced Commissioner Montoya to give her a big flowery speech, despite the fact that Montoya herself sees the whole thing as a transparent dog and pony show. Park isn't dumb either. She knows that she's being used by the top brass at the GCPD right now, but she doesn't really know what to do about it. She's afraid to make any waves, and she also craves Montoya's encouragement, which Montoya doesn't end up giving at all. In fact, she ends up basically trauma dumping on this poor girl, saying, oh yeah, they love you now, you're a hero cop now, but they're gonna chew you up and spit you out soon enough. And I should know, right, I was one of the quote-unquote good ones for a while until I stepped outside the box they made for me, and suddenly I was persona non grata for years. This actually really breaks Officer Park's heart, because she really does truly believe that she can make a difference and that she does want to do right by the city and right by the badge and right by her friends, even if it's difficult. But as we'll see throughout the rest of the story, that's a lot easier said than done. Now, the final cop whose story we see is Officer Wells. We see that when he's not actually patrolling the street, he's working at a midnight basketball league, helping at-risk youth stay out of gangs and helping parolees try and stay on the straight and narrow, even though his superior officer thinks he's being stupid and that statistically speaking, most if not all of these kids are going to reoffend. It's also not just former gangbangers either that Officer Wells helps out. We see one of the people he's taken a particular interest in is, get this, a former Two-Face henchman who now has a pregnant girlfriend. Ooh, interesting. Can of Coke says that comes back and is important later. Later on, the three young cops meet up at a diner to compare notes on their first couple days on the job, and the answer is that it's not nearly everything they thought it was going to be. They're still trying to stay positive and upbeat about the whole thing, but it's really hard. Samantha Parks especially is really suffering right now. She says that she's being held up as a hero cop because she didn't shoot that kid reaching for his phone. Only, here's the thing, as she admits privately to her friends, she didn't do it because it was the right thing to do. She did it because she was afraid. She froze up under pressure. She felt like a coward then, and she especially feels like a coward now because she's too afraid to even come clean to Renee Montoya about what happened. And she'll end up paying for this lie by omission very soon, as the next day she's on the job, there's a bodega robbery. Another guy gets shot, and it turns out that the shooter is none other than one of the at-risk youths that Wells was working with on the basketball court. Wells gives chase and once again ends up freezing up under pressure, which is especially bad this time as the person she's chasing actually does have a gun and actually does shoot back. Dumb luck seems to come in and save Officer Park again, but unfortunately it doesn't help the person who was behind her, who actually did get struck by a bullet as the comic comes to an end. And so that was GCPD The Blue Wall issue number 1, everybody, and overall it's about what I was hoping for when I heard that John Ridley was going to be writing a Renee Montoya GCPD series. After one issue, I'm not quite sure if it's going to be able to fill that Gotham Central-sized hole in my heart, but I mean, really, what series could? It is certainly cool to see someone actively trying to work with Renee Montoya as a character again, because she has such a long, storied, and fascinating character history that has just been sitting there completely unused. Yes, there's some unavoidable discontinuity that you're going to have to swallow to really get into this story, but for what it's worth, as we've seen from promotional art, it looks like Renee Montoya actually does go back to being the Question in time for the Lazarus Planet event next year, so maybe this whole book is really just an excuse for Montoya to speedrun the character development she had before pre-New 52. The new young officers are pretty cool too, and give John Ridley a chance to talk about some really topical matters when it comes to the police-industrial complex and the relationship between the community and cops. The big thematic takeaway seems to be that you can go into wanting to be an officer with all the best intentions in the world with a pure, full heart, and you'll still get ground down into dust. Not just by the job itself, but especially by the other officers and the systems that are already in place. It's a very sad, but again, very true-to-life story that you hear a lot, especially if you listen to people who did stop being cops. They wanted to make a difference, realized it was impossible, and then quit the force. Overall, I don't think this is going to be a book for everyone. Hell, Gotham Central wasn't even a book for everyone. You gotta have a really particular set of tastes. But hey, if you're a fan of Renee Montoya, if you love your Law and Order, murders, your wires, or other such gritty police procedurals, then I think you're going to enjoy this one too. Overall, I think I'd feel comfortable giving this one a 7.5 out of 10.
Hey there everyone, Cape Joel again, and I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you see, be sure to like, subscribe, comment. It really helps drive engagement and helps me out too. Also, if you are a patron, which you can become for as little as $1 a month, you will get exclusive content that no one else can ever see, and you'll get to see the Comic Multiverse podcast before anyone else too. You can check out all this and more down in the description. And until next time everyone, this has been Cape Joel, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.